Any day now, any day now, I shall be released.
I've been asked to preach a secular sermon because the White Night Festival is winding up on a Sunday morning. You know, sermon time. The topic I've been asked to preach on is unrest because, you know, you've either stayed up all night or woken up very early to be on top of this roof. I'm not sure exactly what they expected me to preach about, but as it happens, I'm writing a true crime book at the moment about a murderer in Mississippi. And I've just read 12 true crime books in a row. So the take on the topic that hit me in the head was this: if you kill somebody, can you ever rest? I recorded all my research for this question on my dictaphone, and this sermon is me reading transcripts from my dictaphone recordings. Late last year, I hit record on my dictaphone for the first time. Hello, this is John Safran. It's Monday, the 17th of December, 2012. I'm at the long brown table in my lounge room, in my flat, and it's about 2:43 in the afternoon, and I'm gonna ring Father Bob, the priest I do my Triple J radio show with, and ask him if he knows anyone who's killed anyone, so I can start exploring my question: if you kill somebody, can you ever rest? Making the phone call now. Ooh, 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 ooh. Father Bob picks up the phone. Yeah. Hello, Father Bob, how are you? I'm all right, but I'm in the doctor's. Why are you in the doctor's? The legs. I'm trying to get my legs back. Do you think you're going to be on a walking stick for the rest of your life? Well, now I'm on this bloody walking frame. We're trying to work out what it is, comrade. Dr. Goldberg is telling me get off the phone. You've got a question, comrade? Bob, I was thinking you might have contacts for this thing I'm writing. I wanted to, talk to people who've killed someone. I don't know anybody who's killed someone. You know nobody? I thought, in your scene or whatever. They wouldn't have to give their name or anything. I'd just, talk to them. Oh, it's a bit creepy. You know, Bob, if someone had been released from jail. But John, do you mean murdered them or homicide or manslaughtered them or what? Yeah, I guess murdered or manslaughtered. Father Bob screams at the doctor. Dr. Goldberg, do we know anyone who's killed anyone and wants to talk? John, we know people who've killed people with culpable driving and shit, but you mean murdered? Yeah, I guess so, Bob. I don't think anyone would be the same after they murdered somebody. But Bob, is it is just every day does it float in and out of your head? You just can't get over it? It just corrodes you from inside? Or is it like other things that we do, where you just adjust? Oh, I don't think so. I think it goes to the lizard brain. I think it goes to the subterranean of the dark side of yourself and lurks there. I think so. From my understanding of people, I suspect they've killed people. Bob, I was listening to this one true crime writer on a podcast who was saying that with the killer he was following, that once he'd done it once, then you've sort of crossed that threshold. Of course. And you can just do it again and again and again, or at least in the case of his killer. John, I think that would be true. I think once you've gone to the depths of I'm using the term lizard brain because I was reading that in a book. Your lizard brain, your reptilian self. Once you've killed, of course you can kill again because it triggers that part of your nature. Whereas the human part, John, the rational part can manage and control and say, you can't do that. You can't do that. Bob, but why do you reckon people who don't believe in God, it would still eat away at them? Surely if you've gotten away with it and you don't fear punishment from any supernatural forces, why is it still eating inside of you? I would think that whether you're religious or not, whether you like it or not, you've got the angel of your better nature whatever that's going to be called, whether it's called conscience, maybe we could settle for that word in the secular world. Even Shakespeare referred to conscience that makes the cowards of us all. In this case, I think the conscience, it goes chirping away like a bloody canary. But, Bob, there's some people who've killed and say they've just moved on. Well, John, I suppose Chopper Read would say, you see, if they're in the culture of killing, well, then I know a few people in the culture of killing, but I mean, they would claim it was self-defense, like the animals in the jungle. It's a dark side of things, John. There's another self. I think some people are saying if they survived the jails and things, they're saying that was another person. They tell the board, the parole board, that was another person, that person who did that. I'm no longer that person. I don't know about talking, John. See, if you let it all hang out, does it heal you? Or if you let it all hang out, does it bite you in the ass? And if you publicly let it all hang out, of course, then you're inviting revenge. Anyhow, Dr. Goldberg's telling me get off the phone. Well, if you can think of anyone I can talk to, Bob. Yeah, I will. Good on you, comrade. Thank you, bye-bye. Okay, so Father Bob doesn't know any people who've killed anyone, or at least that he's willing to pass on to me. 2 days later. Hello? It's Wednesday the 19th of December, 2012, 6:30 p.m. Trying to find killers that I can interview. About to send a tweet. The tweet says, have you killed someone? I'm looking to chat to killers, preferably murderers, for a project. Anonymity guaranteed. johnsafran@gmail.com. So, yep, I wonder if I should say get rid of the preferably murderers. So it's just, have you killed someone? I'm looking to chat to killers for a project. Now, maybe people who've killed don't see themselves as killers, so it's a bit offensive to call them killers. A bit like, I'm a person with a disability, I'm not disabled. So, have you killed someone? I'm looking to chat, anonymity guaranteed. I press post on my Facebook and tweet on my Twitter. 1 hour, 45 minutes later. Hello? Ready getting a few leads, ready got a few replies, and a nurse who's implied she killed people through euthanasia. And a couple who say they can put me in contact with people who've killed in the line of duty. They're kind of implying that. But there's this one here by this guy called Mendel, who I know. I launched his book. He wrote a book. So, and he says, and he's sort of involved in a bit of a dodgy world. He's a bit of a fabulist in some circumstances, but he's saying, he's not claiming he's killed someone. He says, here's what he's put on Facebook. John, I can put you in touch with someone who's killed his own father. He's released from prison and open about it. Give me a phone call. Then he follows that up with, I'm serious, by the way. So I'm going to call him now, Mendel. I stole his sister's underpants for race relations. Anyway. Hi, it's Mendel. Please leave a message. Merci beaucoup. Yo, Mendel, stop skateboarding with that Kabbalah rabbi and give me a call. Okay, hope to talk to you soon. Bye-bye. 2 minutes later. I'll read out some of the other messages I've got on Facebook. Are they any good? I've got really a lot. This is from Melanie. I don't know who that is. Not everyone who kills is evil or a psycho. People have killed for many reasons, self-defense, by accident, or to ease the suffering of a loved one. Grouping these people with the Jeffrey Dahmers and Fred Wests of the world is wrong. For these people, taking a life, either deliberately or accidentally, must be incredibly traumatic and distressing and will haunt them for the rest of their lives. They shouldn't be demonised, and someone telling their story is a very important step. Okay, I'm scrolling down, more Facebook messages. Everyone's really giving me the benefit of the doubt that I'm doing something really good for society. Here's one from a woman called Jade. It's not just about art, it's about telling stories. Stories that can have a huge impact on how people feel about subjects that aren't normally talked about in moralistic society. I, for one, am wanting to hear these stories, even if they take me through difficult places morally. Okay, there's lots of sarcastic people on Facebook, lots of people saying, give me a week, as in they'll be able to contribute to my project if I give them a week, in which they will have killed someone. 5 minutes later. Hello? This guy called Richard on my Facebook fan page says, A friend of mine just got life for murder today, but don't think he'll have access to email though. Lots more sarcastic people. They think I'm setting people up. A guy called Charlie says, not falling for this again. Vincent on my Facebook fan page. I was accused by a newspaper of killing someone. That was pretty crap. Another time I gave a massive morphine dose to a young soldier who fatally injured to put him out of his misery. I'll never forget this. 2 hours later. I've been getting a lot more messages. One by this guy called Dyer. He lives in Melbourne, Victoria, Australia. His Facebook page says he knows Macedonian Greek, so I think that might be his real name. I don't quite know if he could be taking the mickey, but I don't know yet. I'm having a Facebook conversation. This is what he says. I shouldn't be saying this because nobody should know, but I happen to respect you. I've killed, but only somebody who deserved it. And I sent back, are you serious? And he sent back, well, I mean, you're not gonna go to the Jacks, are you? You said you'd withhold identity. And I said, is Jacks police? If so, no, I'm not going to the Jacks. And he says, appreciated. This isn't my real name anyway. So what are you after? Do you want to ask me a question or do you want the story? And I've just written back, hi, Dyer. Well, I guess the story is a good place to start. 5 minutes later, Dyer has just got back to me. This is what he says. Well, I dated this girl 2 years ago who broke down to me one day about how some guy from Frankston raped her. And I was torn. After a few months, she called me up telling me she'd run into him and to come down because he was scaring her. I raced down there and just missed him. I'd missed him by a little. On Christmas Eve 2010, I was doing last-minute shopping and my girlfriend pulled me aside and told me he was watching us. I told her to relax and I looked back at him as if to say I was going to hurt him. Anyway, he tried to talk to her and I pushed him away. Then he punched me and I struck him back. My memory blacks out here. He was in a coma until the 12th of May this year, until they pulled the plug. I only served 6 months in Port Phillip because he hit me first. So yeah, I feel shit for his family, but I don't care that he's dead. Whoa. Dictaphone? That whoa you just heard, that whoa is Rachel. She's over at my flat and sitting on my couch. Rachel? I guess I'll ask him next. I'll just say what the question is. If you kill somebody, can you ever rest? Or maybe it's just a bit too literal. Maybe I should ask him something less literal. And Rachel says, well, you could say, does he feel the guy's presence? Is he haunted by this guy? It's interesting because straight away you sort of have all these questions in your mind, like, did he kind of invent this story after he killed someone? Saying the guy raped her, you know what I mean? Sounds real though, doesn't it? I wonder if he's still with the girl. 2 minutes later. Okay, I've written back to him. Wow, Dyer, that's an amazing story. Obviously a monumental and life-changing experience. Does it occupy your mind all the time? Or can you just move on to thinking about other things? For instance, a person's wedding day is monumental and life-changing, but a person can go for months or years without thinking about it. Is it the same with this experience with you? 20 minutes later. I've got a message back from Dyer. Here's what he says. It's always in the back of my mind. I have days when I feel bad and days when I refuse to. Sometimes I need a drink. The best way to describe killing a human is like losing your virginity. It happens in the blink of an eye. You think upon something your whole life, and once it happens, it's over. I didn't plan it. It's quite a burden for me. However, had it been planned, I would most definitely be plotting the next one. Like sex, you always want another notch in your belt. But I didn't enjoy it. The only thing I think about is he deserved it. Yet in the back of my mind, I mourn a rapist. There's never a good excuse. Even if he was Saddam himself, I would still regret it. I've joined the murder club. It's not as easy as it is in the movies. 10 minutes later. I'm writing back. I want to know if he has uncontrollable dreams. Hi, Iris. When painful things happen to me, I can sometimes have nightmares. A girl who I didn't want to split from me, and it occupied my waking hours. Then I trained my brain to not think about it during the waking hours. But then my brain double-crossed me and made things come out in nightmares whilst I slept. Do you ever try to block things out, but they come out in your dreams? 15 minutes later, Iris has written back. Oh, John, I can most definitely relate. I don't have kids, but I always dream of a little girl who asks me why I did it. It happens a lot. I dream about my ex getting raped, and in the dream I just stand there and do nothing because I don't want to hurt him. I feel him smile at me in the dream. I wake up feeling so disgusting, and then it all comes back to me. May I ask how you trained your brain to forget about thinking about your ex in the morning? Did you ever stop thinking about her in your dreams? 5 minutes later. I'm trying to work out how this and what this all means for the sermon. Anyway, I'm not going to think too hard. Something will become apparent. But rabbis, priests too, definitely heard rabbis, when they're challenged about, well, you know, the Bible says thou shalt not kill, so how can you be for capital punishment? Or how can you be for killing those Arabs or whatever? They say, if you look at the root of the word, the Hebrew root of the word, or the Aramaic root of the word, or whatever the hell the root of the word is, it says, thou shalt not murder, not thou shalt not kill. And anyway, that's your escape hatch. So I don't quite know how it ties in with my Greek Macedonian friend, but maybe he hasn't murdered. He's just killed. And that's okay? 10 minutes later. Yo, dictaphone. I remember this rabbi saying to us in school, and he was talking about, I think someone in the class was asking him, what happens if you sin but it wasn't your fault? Like what happens if you're starving and the only thing you can eat is pork? What happens if you're asleep and someone puts some pork in your mouth during Yom Kippur? All that kind of stuff. And then it was like, what happens if you kill but you didn't mean to kill the person? Like, have you still sinned? And the rabbi said, oh, no you haven't. There are things that aren't on purpose, da-da-da-da-da. But then he said, oh, you may ask, why did it happen that you, particularly you, were the one to accidentally kill the person? What had you done to make God make you a killer? So maybe you are culpable, even if it is accidental. Just, you know, not logically, but godly. 2 minutes later. Hey, Rachel, maybe with other things you can turn to therapy and self-help. But I'm thinking maybe if you kill someone, you might have to turn to God. Like maybe, you know, you need a ritual that intense. You know, Christianity gives you rebirth, a whole set of instructions to wash yourself of your past and be reborn. Maybe that's what Iris needs. Maybe I have to tell him he has to become a Christian. And Rachel says, Safran, I'm not sure that's the only answer. And I say, well, what would Richard Dawkins say? Richard Dawkins would say, oh, you just rationally reach a conclusion that it was right for you to kill this person. This is in his case when it's like it's up in the air. Like he's not really a classic, undeniably evil person who murdered someone, I think. 15 minutes later. This is what I just wrote back to Iris. What vivid dreams. I did trick my brain into stopping the painful dreams by saying this Jewish prayer before bed that was meant to stop nightmares. And the prayer worked. But then I convinced myself that I needed to have the painful dreams whilst I slept to flush out what was there, or else the painful thoughts would just build and build. So I stopped saying the prayer and the nightmares started again. I'm sure science students would say I was just a slave to the power of suggestion. Anyway, eventually the dreams went away. Iris, what did your family do during all this? Were they supportive? Do you reckon even if they were supportive on another level, they saw you differently to before it happened? 10 minutes later. Okay, I've moved from the long brown table in my bed, in the lounge room, to my bedroom. There's pillows on the bed that have cats and crocodiles and goats. Oh, and a turtle too. What else is happening here? There's me, opposite me on the wall. There's a picture of me on a gun range in Los Angeles. I'm just there with a real gun. I actually shot that with this guy called Rabbi Mermelstein for Jews for the Preservation of Firearms. And Anyway, there's my squash racket. There's all my DVDs. Kill Bill Volume 2, Inglorious Bastards. So much violence. 5 minutes later, Eyeless has written back about his family. Let's see, John. During all that, I didn't see much of them until my court date. When I told I was going to jail, I was given a few minutes with them. My mum, my nan, and my uncle. They just looked at me and said it wasn't my fault. And I agreed with that. But throughout the visits, over time, my pop was never there. I assumed he wanted nothing to do with me. But when I was released, all he said to me was, "Why didn't you just walk away?" I never had an answer. But over time, things went back to normal, but they'll never be the same. My family treats me the same as I do them. However, being of Greek background, they don't like to speak too much about it. That's just how it is in WOG family. You do something wrong and you can't speak about it because no one wants to remember. But I'm really lucky to have their support. At first, they all viewed me differently, but they knew the only thing that had changed was that I'd seen too much. I did try to make amends with the guy's parents. I wanted to visit him whilst he was in his coma, but they refused. Can't say I blame them, but what can you do? 5 minutes later. Okay, I'm going through Eyeless's Facebook page now, looking at the photos. There's one of him as a little kid. He's really young, maybe 3 years old. He's standing in the corner of a room in some house, and he's got his hand touching a guitar that's propped up on a stand. There's a Marshall speaker in the background. And Eyeless has written this on his Facebook page next to the photo. "You grew up to be me, you stooge. Look at the mess you've made. Grrr." 1 minute later. Also on his Facebook photos page is a drawing of a bong he's done with one of those big biros that has 4 colours. And there's a picture of a girl with a guitar in lingerie. And this is what he has under likes on his Facebook page. Likes, music, Nikki Sixx from Motley Crue, Papa Roach, Harris, Alexio, James Michael, Gigi Allen. Movies, Dumb and Dumber, Sid and Nancy. Interests, violence. And Trigon, whatever Trigon is. Activities, heroin and Port Phillip Prison. That's the prison he was in. And he likes my John Safran official page too. So I'm all caught up in this. I like it. 1 minute later. Okay, I clicked on Port Phillip Prison, which he had under liked. Port Phillip Prison is a maximum security prison located at Truganina, Victoria, Australia. It is Victoria's largest prison, able to accommodate up to 824 prisoners. The prison is privately operated on behalf of the Government of Victoria by G4S Australia Proprietary Limited. The prison includes a youth unit for young adult inmates aged 18 to 25. Cells within the units have a shower, hand basin, toilet, desk, chair, television, kettle, storage shelves, intercom and bed. One little interesting thing is this. His prison was operated by G4S, Securing Your World, and they're the ones that also handle the security at Triple J. I know this because a few months ago all the security changed, even the man at the front desk changed, and now he has a G4S shirt. So me and my little friend, new friend, have a connection. We both have a guard at the door. I have, who wears a G4S shirt. The next morning. Okay, it's the morning now, the 20th of December, 9:40 a.m, and they're throwing tiles off the roof next door. Hey, what was I going to say? 2 things that are floating through the world at the moment, kind of relevant to if you kill somebody, can you ever rest? Is that these 2 DJs from Today FM made a prank call to a hospital in Britain trying to get through to the princess having a baby and pretended they were the Queen. And the person who put the call through killed herself because she was so ashamed by the prank and whatever else was going on in her life. But you see these guys on the TV, the 2 DJs, their life ain't going to be the same. They won't be able to rest. The other thing is the Connecticut school massacre, which is floating through the atmosphere, where 20 kids were killed. 2 minutes later. in my lounge room. Rachel is on the other side, typing her own stuff. Anyway, Rachel, the first thing is, if you take it on face value, this guy, he's raped the girl. And so, even on that level, if you follow the logic of Quentin Tarantino films, there has to be some equalising of the universe. There has to be vengeance. So on that level, is it the worst thing that he killed him? Is what a person would say. I'm not saying I'd say that. The second thing, Rachel, is this. Maybe for honour's sake, for her honour. If we were in some other culture, they'd say, and not even other real distant cultures, we can't get our heads around. There'd be conservative places in America, like in Mississippi where I was, where if a man raped a woman and then he followed her about and tormented her, and you're the new boyfriend, you should try to immobilise this guy and kill him. And that's how the world should work. Rachel, if you take his story on face value, he's committed a chivalrous act. I think that's what I'm getting at. An act of chivalry, which would have been okay in previous generations. And Rachel says to me, like in all those old movies and stuff, men always got into duels over chivalrous acts. There's like the villain who's been harassing the woman or whatever, and then the good guy in it challenges him to a duel. And then I say to Rachel, the other thing I was thinking, just say, so this guy is being punished by being thrown in prison, and also some people shun him for being a killer, but maybe that's the price he's paying for being chivalrous. Maybe the law doesn't decide what's right or wrong in this situation. It's like if you want to stand up for the honour of this woman and you kill her attacker, you'll have dark nights of the soul and it'll follow you around for the rest of your life. But it was worth it. It's what you had to do. It's what some people would say. I'm not saying I'd say that, Rachel. 4 days later, yo, it's Christmas Eve. This is what I'm writing to Iris. What did your girlfriend at the time make of what happened? And did she support you after the fight? And have you dated anyone since? Did you tell them about what happened? 3 hours later, Iris just got back to me. This is what he says. She was really shook up over it, but we've remained friends. I do date a lot, and to be honest, I've never known how to say it, or when to say it. There's no good time to say it, but I have told one girl, and she did not get scared. But she told her friends, and that upset me. But my girlfriend did support me. She wrote me every week and sent money when I was in jail. One thing I'll always say to myself is she's the victim in all this. 1 week later, hello, my Greek Macedonian Facebook friend. It's me again. I hope your new year is going well. 1, if you had somehow killed the guy and no one caught you, and you didn't think anyone would find out, would it still eat you up inside? 2, did you think you were going to kill the guy when you fought him? 3, the Age's front page yesterday was about young men who've killed with a king hit. Did you see that? What did you think? 2 days later, okay, Iris got back to me. He left it a couple of days, so I was freaking out a bit because he was updating his page with photos of guitars that he'd taken, so it wasn't like he wasn't on Facebook. Anyway, this is what he sent back. I constantly wonder, had nobody caught me, where would I be? But that would eat me up for sure. I would have to turn myself in. I had no idea I was going to end his life, but I know I was sure angry, and I wanted to hurt him. That certainly plays on my mind from time to time. But as far as that king hit on the news goes, it makes me sick. I can only imagine how sick they are going to feel. I mean, sure, I king hit someone as well, but maybe I'm just making excuses, but I refuse to relate my intentions with theirs. How can you just do that to somebody? That's what separates humans from animals. Hey, Rachel, what do you think I do with all that? Is he just making excuses? And Rachel says to me, I don't know. 5 minutes later, hey, Rachel, I spoke to Sophia last night. You know Sophia, she's Serbian. And so I'm going to catch up with her and her mother, because her mother's a psychologist who treats Serbians who've come over and were involved in the war and were killers. And Sophia's mother just says they have literal insomnia. Every last person who's killed in a war has literal insomnia, and she's never treated a person who hasn't. And Rachel says, wow, that's amazing, that's huge. And I say, but there's this other guy who emailed me. He's this white guy from Perth. He went to fight with the Nepalese People's Army in Nepal in the 1990s and killed 2 soldiers. And he thinks he's cool with it because he got validated. The Nepalese people thought he was a hero. So maybe it's how the community sees your killing that decides whether you can rest or not. And Rachel says, maybe. And I say, so if you kill a rapist, are you like Gilmar's killer or the opposite of Gilmar's killer? And Rachel says, I don't know. 3 weeks later, okay, I've come up with this idea that halfway tests, if you kill somebody, can you ever rest? But I need to meet Iris. 5 minutes later, hi Iris, I'd like to ask you some more questions. Would you be cool with catching up in person? Also, I have another idea about the piece, but I'll tell you about that later. 2 hours later, g'day John. Well, what can I say? Sure, I'd be honoured. By the way, call me Jacob. 5 days later. 5 days later, I drift off the train at Flinders Street. I swipe through the turnstile and cross over to Federation Square. The Yarra River to my right, the church to the left. I once climbed the inside of the spire of that church. A sculptor is chiselling a teddy bear out of a block of ice in the middle of Fed Square. I meet Jacob at an outside table at one of the Fed Square cafes. He looks so young. Michael Jackson sings "You're Just Another Part of Me" from inside the cafe. We talk and talk for nearly 2 hours. I tell him all the theories on killers I've read in true crime books. And he tells me this. My name is Jacob. I was born in 1990 in Doncaster. My mother is Greek Macedonian. My father is Maori. Grew up with my grandparents because my mother was a bit in a bad way and my dad wasn't around. It doesn't really add to the incident, but you know, when you're in jail, it's kind of typical. They assume you're destined to do it. My biggest memory from when I was little ended with me being in the papers. I've never been able to know the full story. Everyone hides it from me. It was a year and a half before I went to primary school, so I was 4 or 5 years old. My grandparents went overseas and I stayed with my mother in Ringwood. She was with a dickhead called Peter. He was extremely famous for being a dickhead around the Ringwood areas. My dad turned up at the door one night and Peter the dickhead pulled out a gun and held it to my dad. My dad dobbed him into the police, I think, and the police came to the assumption my mum and me were being held hostage. I remember we were all in the bedroom and there were lights flashing through the windows, the most ridiculous spotlights you could ever picture. But we weren't being held hostage. Peter the dickhead just couldn't come out because he'd get jail for having a gun, and my mum was just supporting him. The police stuck a two-way speaker in the fence. My mum screamed into the speaker, "We're not being held hostage." But the police thought, that's just the type of thing someone being held hostage would be forced to say. This went on for days. Life was normal in the house, but we turned on the TV and were on the news. Finally, my mum and I came out. I just remember the whole street being filled with police, and there were dudes on the roof like SWAT teams you see in America. And my uncle was on the street screaming, "Hurry up! Get away from the house! Hurry up!" I don't know how the police got Peter the dickhead, but he got fucked for it. Put in jail. I have a picture from the newspaper. 5-year-old me being walked from the house by one police officer on the scene. I did primary school like everyone else, then years 7 to 10 of high school. I did a bit of Unit A in year 11, then we dropped out, me and a few friends, to form a band. It wasn't the best idea in the world. Seemed really good back then, not so much now. I don't really want to say my band's name. I don't want you to look it up on Google. I was second guitarist and vocalist. I was playing my uncle's Fender Strat. He'd go to work from 9 to 5:30 and I'd take all his equipment to my friend's home and try to get back as fast as I could before my uncle got home. We had a MySpace page I keep forgetting to take down. Please don't look it up. Apart from a MySpace page, it didn't happen. But I met a lot of girls, and then there's the one who I met in 2009. Actually just up here, by the Yarra River. Is it okay if I cut to the chase? We were doing Christmas shopping and the guy turned up. It was at the shopping centre, not far from my house. It was outside where all the buses go past. We were sitting there and he just happened to be walking. There's actual footage, surveillance footage. They played it in court. It's the worst thing I've ever seen. In my mind, I was only pushed a bit, but in the video, I was taking a lot from him. He did hit me first, but that's after I shoved him back. Once I received the first punch, that's when I really went off. I hit him 7 times. I hit him 3 times before he fell. But then when he was on the ground, I kept hitting him. He was bent up. I punched him 4 more times and then he just fell open. And I remember a kind of unusual sound. It wasn't so much moaning, it was just weird. I had blood all over my hands. Security came and took my name. Police were called to the scene. They just collected me and put me in a cell up in a police station near Doncaster. And I just didn't know for about 3 days what was going on. And on the 3rd day, they said, "You're going to be trialed today." I'm just like, what's this about? The judge gave me battery because I was hit first and had never done anything except get a few Connex fines. I actually got one on the way here. Once I got to Port Phillip prison, everything was really bad. The things I found out there were really horrifying. It's like a class of kids who weren't good enough to pass English, so they've made a special class. That's what jail's like. At the gate, they gave me $5 and a blanket. As soon as I walked in, I was robbed for it by an Aboriginal called Mr. Phillips. I was put in a cell with an Australian called Gaza. In prison, people would say, "I do want to find the parents of people who I've hurt and say sorry." And I'm like, me too. Everyone used to trip out how I'd put someone in a coma, and they used to tell me, "You know he's going to die." And I used to get nightmares a lot. And it was so shit. The worst ones I got, and still sometimes get, is nothing I remember. But I wake up and know it's about the guy. And I wake up in a massive sweat and I'm panicking. It's almost like you've just run through 1,000,000 miles and you stop and dropped in bed. And sometimes it's like it's my punishment. You asked me what nighttime in jail is like. I'm not into the supernatural, but another thing that would happen in my cell is it was haunted by a baton. You know, a police baton that would stroke past the bars? And it used to scare the shit out of me. It wasn't an actual baton, just a sound. I'd watch the hallway when I heard it, and there was no one there. It happened twice, when Gazza, my cellmate, wasn't there, when he was in solitary. And the second time I got up, I'm banging on my cell, "Let me out!" The jacks rolled up. They're like, "What for?" And I tell them, they're like, "Go to bed or we're gonna get you." And I'm like, shit. So I go back to the bunk and pull the blanket over my face. And I just shook until we had to get up. And no one else ever heard it except me. And everyone used to think I was bullshitting because I was young. I've never been such a supernatural person. I don't know what it was. It took a lot of time to adjust to the real world, because I came out and knocked on my friend's door. First thing, I'm like, "Hi," and he's like, "Where were you, cunt?" I'm like, "Oh, I was in jail," because he didn't know what had happened. A lot of people didn't know. My grandparents didn't talk about it to any of my friends who called up or anything. My ex-girlfriend gave me the number of a friend of a guy in the coma. I just said to him, "I do want to see the parents. It's what I want to do." He was actually quite nice to me, but he was like, "They don't want to see you." I'm like, "Please keep trying." I died when he died. I died as well. And now I'm here. I'm trying to re-find an identity, and I've been lost for so long. And also in the back of my mind, it's kind of like, am I kidding myself? Will I ever regain anything of what I had back then? Am I going to find out who I was? And sometimes I do, and sometimes I lose it. The worst thing for me is I'm somebody who likes to be alone, but can't stand it. And the other thing is being a thinker. I think really hard about things that I shouldn't. You can only Google so many times, like, oh, what to do in this situation. Like you bookmark something like, how to feel better about yourself in 6 ways, and 6 ways to make a better impression. It helps you momentarily when you read it, and then in the morning you might apply some of it, but it's not going to do much for you. I try not to dread on the little things, but something like killing, you just can't get over it. I still think about it every day. When I wake up and I'm not thinking about it, I'm conscious of it, you know? When I'm sleeping, I'm conscious of it. It's always around, but I'm trying to get to a point where, not that I won't think about it, but so like, I keep bitching about it. I have to live my life. I've got to get rid of the bad thoughts happening, because one thing everybody says, it's what I'm doing now that's going to define the present and future, and you can't let your past define you. But there's certain things that happen in people's lives, and what happened with him, you know, it's something I can't wipe my hands of. Like, that's the biggest sin. What are you going to do? My Nan says, you're not going to go to hell. I'm like, thanks, I'll try not to. And I say to Jacob, I saw you had all these pictures of guitars up on your Facebook page. And Jacob says, that's actually one thing that's really helped me. Somehow last year, I developed the biggest love for guitars in the world. This is going to sound really bad, but nothing happened, so I'm going to say it. I'd made a few contacts in jail. When I was released, there was one guy who robbed a dealer for 10 grand, or he wanted to rob a dealer for 10 grand. And I was like, well, you're an idiot. And he was like, well, if you help me out, you'll get 5 grand out of it. And automatically I've gone home. I'm Googling, what do I want? What do I want? And I thought, I need a guitar for raw recording because I'm sick of using my uncle's equipment and mine's shit. And I thought about my favourite guitarists. They all used to use Les Pauls, and I fell in love with that guitar. I told the guy who wanted to rob the dealer to fuck off, but I still wanted the guitar. So I got a job on a boat as a bartender and saved the money for the guitar. Every day, I've been practicing. I've practiced so much last year. I've developed calluses and stuff. And I was going ape shit. I bought pedals. I overdosed on them. I was buying everything. This is one thing that really pulled me from the dark, the way I was. There's more to life than dreading. And music is amazing, but I never gave guitar much credit. I thought, you've got to be the front man. But I love guitar so much, and that was the guitar I wanted. So yeah, I went a bit sick, because I was customizing it and uploading each shot to Facebook as I was doing it, rushing through, because when you take the strings off it, the neck can fuck up. And then I say to Jacob, hey, I had this idea, which is a bit of a cheeky idea. And Jacob says, you are John Safran. And I say, yes, I am. When I was looking at your Facebook page and saw guitars, I was thinking, if you anonymously, when I'm doing the sermon on the rooftop, you'd have to be anonymous or somehow in disguise. And so I'd just start telling the story of what happened to you, and then sort of like you'd be playing in the background, and it would slowly click with people that you might be the killer. And Jacob says, but how would they know it was me? You'd have to mention a few features, like he's got ridiculous gay hair. And I say, but you'd have to be anonymous, wouldn't you? You'd have to be in disguise, wouldn't you? And Jacob says, what for? And I say, because you're putting your face to it. And Jacob says, don't stress. And I say, oh, okay, well, that's interesting. Anyway, so would you play guitar for that? And Jacob says, when is it? And I say, it's on Sunday morning, about a month away. And Jacob says, so that gives me a lot of time to practice. What kind of thing are you after? And I say, well, the whole thing needs to be true to you, like Motley Crue or whatever. Those sorts of bands have ballads or whatever. Something like that, sort of in the background, but sort of metal. So I imagine something like Guns N' Roses when they're doing some light jam, like November Rain. And Jacob says, is it through a PA? And I say, oh yeah. And Jacob says, okay, can we have a backing track at all? And I say, yeah, of course. And he says, like if I make one? And I say, oh, absolutely. And Jacob says, well, I'll do a few demos and I'll send them to you or something. I'll put it up on YouTube or something for you. And I say, sure. But you're not concerned that you know, because up until this, like your association with being a killer is a private thing that no one really knows about? And Jacob says, absolutely. But at the same time, once again, my life is too painful keeping up appearances. I just want life to happen. I'm not here to impress anyone else. I'm sure I'm not going to walk down the street and people will be like, oh, that's the murderer, you know. So I should be all right. That's kind of my way of coping with it. Like I said, I don't want that to hold me back anymore. And I say, that's interesting, because I assumed, my guess was that you'd say something along the lines of, I'll do it, but I have to be wearing a balaclava. And then there'd be a bit where we'd go to the costume hire place and pick out a balaclava or a Slipknot clown mask. And I'd tell the crowd, this shows the person has to hide. This shows the person is on the run. This shows the person can never rest. 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, I'm in Doncaster at Jacob's grandparents' house. His granddad is squatting in the backyard, bundling up brooms to sell at the Dandenong market. His grandma is taking ice blocks out of the freezer in the kitchen. I'm with Jacob in his bedroom. He's tuning his guitar. There's a Papa Roach picture disc on the wall and a Motley Crue record lent up on his desk. Also on the desk is a photo that I first saw on Facebook. Jacob as a 3-year-old, hand on a guitar that's propped up on a stand, Marshall speaker behind him, in some room in this very house. He had typed on Facebook next to this photo, "You grew up to me. You grew up to be me, you stooge. Look at the mess you've made. Grrr." I turned to Jacob. So what do I say to the people? What's your answer? If you kill somebody, can you ever rest? And Jacob says, you have to ask me in 5 years. And I say, that sounds like you don't think you can scrape it from your head. And Jacob says, but I've got to believe that I can, because I can't wake up every day like this. And I say, that sounds like you're trying to trick yourself into believing it, but in actuality you can't. Jacob looks at me with the scared eyes of the 3-year-old boy in the Facebook photo. He picks up his guitar pick, puts his foot to the pedal and starts to strum his Les Paul guitar. And that's our sermon. Thank you very much for coming in the morning.